Hello, I'm Peter Boyer from Climate Tasmania. I'm meeting today with my colleague David Hamilton, one of our expert members who's been working on what we need to do here in Tasmania to stabilise our climate. David was educated in physics and worked as an occupational health scientist for many years. During 15 years of employment with ExxonMobil, he had experience in most sections of the oil industry. Since moving to Tasmania, he's worked part-time as an energy consultant, advising on energy efficiency, renewable energy, and the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. He was the founding convener of the Tasmania North branch of the Alternative Energy Association. David, you and I have wrestled for many years with the life-changing issues that climate change presents to all people everywhere. We've seen successive Tasmanian governments make bold pronouncements about what they want to do about it, what they plan to do about it, and claim to be leading the world, but only to leave office without making any difference to the amount of carbon that goes up into the atmosphere as a result of our activities on this island. Why do you think this is?
There are many reasons, Peter. But one of the big ones, I think, is that many politicians are reluctant to do anything that upsets the powerful interests in our society. The particular issue I would like to chat with you about, stranded assets, is one of those.
Okay, what exactly is a stranded asset?
Well, an asset is a thing that a person has bought and expects to use for an extended period of time. Assets are said to be stranded if they can't be used for their expected life due to some issue or problem outside the control of the asset's owner, even though the asset is otherwise perfectly usable.
What kinds of assets are we talking about here?
Well, the list is long. Cars, trucks, motorbikes, tractors, boats, gas heaters and boilers are just some common examples.
What has the list that you've just mentioned got to do with climate change?
It's all about the fuels they use. The fundamental cause of climate change is our use of fossil fuels, all the fuels we get from coal, oil and gas, such as petrol, diesel, aviation fuels, gas, bottle gas, and so on. When we use those fuels by burning them, we get energy, but we also put carbon dioxide into our atmosphere. It's the increase in carbon dioxide from burning those fuels which is the main cause of global heating. The climate will get worse while we continue to burn those fuels. So we need a shift from petrol, diesel, gas, and so on to clean energy if we want to stabilise our climate.
But here in Tasmania and in many parts of the world, people buy new cars and trucks and tractors and boats every day that run on petrol and diesel. Are you saying that those of us who do so won't be able to use them for their full expected life?
I'm saying that the sooner all of us stop burning petrol, diesel, gas, and so on, the sooner the climate will stop getting worse. If we are okay with our children and grandchildren inheriting a world where the climate continues to get worse and worse, with more extreme weather, more heat, more storms, more fires, more droughts, and more floods, then we can continue to burn those fuels. If, on the other hand, we want our climate to at least stop getting worse and worse, then we will shift away from petrol, diesel, gas, and so on to clean energy. The faster we make that shift, the less bad the climate will get.
Surely our government should at least be warning us about stranded assets.
Of course they should. But this is where we started, with politicians being scared of upsetting people. It would take courage for a politician to admit in clear and simple terms to people buying new cars, trucks, tractors, and so on that run on fossil fuels should not use them for their full life for the sake of their children and grandchildren.
All of those things that we've talked about use petrol, diesel, gas, all those many forms of fossil fuels. What about assets involved with the supply and sale of those fuels?
Well, assets used to supply fossil fuels, such as fuel terminals, fuel tanks, fuel trucks, service stations, are also on the potentially stranded list. Indeed, as the speed of the shift from our current fuels to clean energy is the most important decider of how bad our climate gets, a flippant response is to say that the sooner those assets are stranded, the better. But that could end up getting a bit messy. So a more considered response is that the shift from the legacy fossil fuels to clean energy will require careful management. For example, consider service stations. If all service station owners decide that they will hold on in the face of falling demand as long as possible, then it is likely that bankruptcies will be the result, and that the taxpayer will end up picking up the cost of demolition and site cleanup. If, on the other hand, all the service station owners exit the business early, then the owners of remaining fossil fuel powered equipment will have difficulty obtaining fuel for them. Careful management of the transition is required, and that will need to be done by our governments.
So, the bottom line, what should Tasmanians do about this problem?
The first and most important thing is to demand that our politicians and other community leaders talk clearly and explicitly about what we all need to do to respond to the climate crisis. Instead of using vague phrases like reducing emissions and decarbonisation, we should expect them to talk about shifting from petrol, diesel and gas to clean energy. And we should try to talk in that way ourselves. From there, what people can do will depend very, very much on their personal circumstances. For example, buying a new electric vehicle won't be an option for many households in this cost of living crisis. If people in that situation can keep using an existing vehicle for a bit longer, particularly if they work at driving it as little and as efficiently as possible to reduce the amount of fuel they use, then that will help, and it might be all that they can do. In most cases, the shift would be to electricity, and there is an increasing amount of guidance available on household electrification, and some states have grant schemes and or low interest loan schemes to help households with that shift.
Okay, so there you have it. We all have a role to play in making our climate safer. We need our government to understand the urgency of this imperative, and the government needs to feel confident that we will support it in taking effective action. That concludes our interview. Thanks to David Hamilton and the Climate Tasmania team, and thanks to you for watching.